I think we should still honor how important that role is, because when we have everyone leaving that role, now we have a huge gap of meaning and depth and nourishment to our souls in society now that we've been talking about in the American culture.
I don't know why I said it like
Hello, world.
that. Don't know why I said it like that. Anyway, welcome to Let's Talk Stories, the pop culture podcast where three, but today two, very obsessed storytellers unpack the movies, shows, and characters that have lived rent-free in our heads. It's therapy, but for the stories that made us. I am Jared.
And I am Jaylon.
And today we are, today I'm just going to say, I was going to be clever. I can't be clever. I couldn't come up with a clever thing to say. So it's just me and Jaylon. Charles is out and about exploring the world of MomoCon. Or I guess it's over now, but he's probably decompressing because I believe Charles, like us, is also an introvert. So I imagine, I imagine his social battery is beyond dead. It's like when your cell phone has been dead for a significant amount of time and then you try to charge it and it takes like 30 minutes before it even turns on.
Yup.
That's where I
Yup.
feel like Charles is right now. So
I think we were having this conversation at one point, kind of recently. I feel like every creative writer is an introvert just because of the way we process things, and that just lends itself to the practice of writing. And so I'm really curious to meet an extroverted writer and see what that looks like in real life, because I feel like it's trying to look for a unicorn.
that actually might be true. But at the same time, I think I have met extroverted writers. I think that their style of writing is very different.
Interesting.
Like, because the person, so every introverted writer I know, well, I'm a very different type of writer than most people I know. Most of the writers I know are smut loving writers who just want to make everybody bang and be fairies and all kinds of other stuff. I'm in a camp of my own over here. I have not met writers like me that are just like trying to burn the world down with characters that are just like tragically, devastatingly either horrible people or surrounded by other horrible people who do horrible things. I'm a dark soul. But I don't meet a lot of writers like that. But I know they exist because I read their work, but I don't meet them. But then I've met other writers that are very, very that have like, oh, they love romance. And so they themselves are very introverted, but their characters are very extroverted and very like just kind of like what they imagine extroverted people are like, or the people which are really more like people that they know that they can't stand. So they make them into characters that are just like out and into the world, I feel like.
Okay, so extroverted writers, we need you to speak up. We need you to donate your brains to be studied for science. But also, please let us know, because I know as an introvert, I feel like my personality is very often underrepresented, but also improperly displayed in fiction. So are people, what's the word, appropriating the extroverted people in their lives and making their characters just very poor representations of extroverts? And are you offended by this? Please come forward and speak for yourself.
Yes, please do. We need to know. We need to know this. That's a great question. I think, yeah, because like the only extroverts that I know that are writers, their characters, oddly enough, are usually horror. Like all the extrovert writers I know write
It's
horror.
because they met all the people. They've like gone
They
out
want to
and
kill them
people.
all.
Yeah. And so now they know what the world is really like, and they just need to write it as it is and get all their traumatizing experiences with humans onto the page.
That makes sense. That actually makes sense. I am for this lore, and I will commit it to I will commit it to memory. That is now canon for me until the extroverts come forth and
And let us know that we're
correct
appropriate
us
their
is
personality.
going to be that's what it is. So yes. So what have you had a chance to check out this week? What's been exciting you over the last couple of days?
Well, I was telling you earlier when we had our developmental editing meeting that I've been trying to exercise my skill in reading audiobooks. So I've been reading a historical fiction audiobook called Britfield that was recommended to me by a friend. And audiobooks still drive me insane. And this one is driving me insane trying to listen to it, but the story itself has not made me want to give up on it yet. So
Okay.
that's a win, I suppose. And then as far as watching stuff, over the long weekend, my husband and I have been chilling out doing a Marvel Universe marathon, just watching all of the movies in chronological order. It started with we were just watching all the Iron Man movies, and then we were like, "Oh, no, let's watch this in chronological order." So that's been a fun thing that we've been doing. That's given me both an appreciation for Marvel stories in the Marvel Universe and also made me realize some of the things that really bug me about those stories.
Some of the stuff you wanna give the atomic elbow to, I understand. I totally feel that. I feel that. Yeah, I love you're right, we did talk about the audiobooks before we got on the podcast, but yeah, for me, I used to have a real big beef with audiobooks to begin with because I used to kind of I don't know, I was a part of the camp of, like, I felt like if I'm listening to audiobooks, I didn't really read the book. And that's what I used to feel. I just felt like I couldn't do it. But then and so, like, because like, if you're a big fan of book talk, which chances are if you listen to this podcast, you probably are, and you see, like, people are like, "Oh, for the month of April, I read 568 books," and I'm just like, "What do you mean? Like, how did you do what do you do for a living? When do you have the time? Do you sleep?" And obviously I'm
For real.
exaggerating, but they're legitimately though. I've heard people be like, for the month of whatever, I read like 30 books, and I'm like, how? How did
Yeah.
you do it? You read a book a day? Like I don't
Yeah.
understand how that happened. But then I was like, oh no, they're listening to audiobooks. And then so yesterday, it's funny you bring this up. Yesterday I was watching a TikTok book talker, pretty I forget his name, but he's like a pretty popular. If you see his face, I'm pretty sure you would know him if you've ever been on BookTok. He's like always on there, but he's like the master of 5 stars. But like he was talking about how people listen to BookTok on, I'm not BookTok, audiobooks on like I think he said it was it 3 point something or 2.5 the speed listening speed. And
Wow.
so he was like, people listen to it on that. And he was like, I can never do it. I can never do it. And I don't know how people do that. He's like, it's not a thing. It can't be a thing, but people do. And so he's like, just for reference, here's what it sounds like. And so he plays it, and it's just like I got like maybe one word out of it. The rest of it sounded like somebody was speaking a foreign language to me the entire time. And I was like, who's listening? Are you really pulling in? Are you really learning anything from the book? Do you know what the book's
Right.
really about? Do you like
Yeah.
I believe that you could listen to it. Obviously, you have ears, you're not deaf, you can hear it. However, are you really
Comprehension.
absorbing any Yes, exactly. Because I feel like people do that because they just wanna be able to say that they've read X amount of books, or they can say that they can be part of the crowd of people that read that book, even though they have no idea what it really was about or what really happened or anything like that because they listened to it in 10x speed. It's like chapter 1. It's like, okay,
They just
but
entirely skipped the prologue because it was too short.
exactly. It's barely even that. It's just like
Wow.
it's like, "Oh, okay, I totally got that. I'm in it now." It's like, "No, no, I'm not."
I think it's a little bit of homeschool lore. Growing up, we had to take a yearly standardized test
Mhm.
and then have it mailed in and graded to make sure that, like, we were learning everything we were supposed to be learning for our state's regulations. And they always had a reading comprehension section. And I was always really good at that section, but I knew most people hated it
Mhm.
because you would just have to sit here and listen to the moderator read stories very slowly and then answer questions about them. And so I feel like those people have now invented this 10x speed in audiobooks. And they're like, no, just screw reading comprehension entirely.
I completely agree with that. The funny thing is I too was really, really good at the reading comprehension part of of the standardized tests, and I was shit at math.
Same.
Mostly because the word problems pissed me off so badly. I was like, "This is math. How dare you make me read to do math?" And then because like I always got confused. It'd be like Johnny had 75 apples, and then one rolled underneath a cart, and I didn't even know he was in a cart. So I'm like, "What?" Then I got confused. I got confused about the context of what was going on. I was like, "This isn't a very good story because you."
Yeah.
And
No, we
then by
just
the end,
take
it's
our
like, "But what's
stories
the
too
answer?"
seriously.
Exactly. It's like, "So how many apples does he have?" I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out when he got in the cart, and I'm like, yeah, I've come to accept audiobooks, and not only that, but I've come to love them. But I also, because of my ADHD, I have to read along with it. If I read it without the audiobook, it will take me 65 years for me to read a book. It will take me forever to do it. if I do it with the audiobook, it's like it keeps me on track. And then also I also kind of love it because when I'm reading it, my pronunciation of names, especially seeing how I'm stuck in fantasy world, fantasy genre, my pronunciation of names is the worst in the history of it. And it's so embarrassing because like I was reading up the Poppy War, which is one of the things I've been doing this past week. And like I was pronouncing these names when I've because I read the first like 3 or 4 chapters, not with the audiobook, just by itself, the hard copy book. And I was reading it and I was like, yeah, I've got this. Cool. And then like later on, like this past week, I was like, I picked it back up and I had it on my Kindle and I did the audiobook and I was doing the pronunciations. And I was so embarrassed by the way that I had been pronouncing them that I was like, I will never tell anyone that this happened. I mean, obviously I have a
And
podcast,
now you're
so
telling the
I'm
world.
telling everyone, but in my mind, when I was reading and listening, I was like, I can never. Like, yes, I'll tell you that I pronounced them wrong. I will never tell you how I pronounced them. You will never know that. You will never get to see the bloopers. But yeah, so I guess that goes into my week of what I've been doing is I was reading the Poppy War. I'm halfway through it so far and I love it. I love it so much. I was a little bit traumatized by this book. There is a part in this book where they talk about how the main character basically has her ovaries removed so that she doesn't have she chooses to have her ovaries removed so that she doesn't or something like that so she doesn't have to have a period ever again because it's inconvenient to her learning. And I'd heard about it, but hearing about it and then reading it
Are two
was
different.
two very different experiences. And I'm not a woman, so I have no idea what it's like to have a period or any of those things. I was raised by a woman, and I know that my experience having secondhand dealing with, and I was married to a woman, so I know the secondhand experience of dealing with women on their period, and I know that it is not a pleasant experience for them or anyone around them. And so
Well, you've got that right.
and I mean that respectfully, but it's true. So the idea, though, that she was like, this teenage girl was like, I need to go to the infirmary and have them remove my internal, working, my internal plumbing, if you will, to avoid interfering with my studies, is just wild to me. And I was just like, okay, I'm here for this character. Talk about conviction. Talk about like committed to the goal.
I
I'm
don't think
for
I
it.
would have conviction.
It's like, when I first read, I was like, oh, this is gross. This is eerily gross. Oh, this is gross. And then the more I got away from it, it was like, I mean, it wasn't like super detailed or anything. It was like maybe a paragraph or two that they really talk about it, but just the idea of it was in my brain and it wouldn't leave. And I was just like,
Yeah.
gross, gross, gross.
No.
And then I was
Now it's
like,
in your head. Now it's there to mess with you.
yeah,
And it won't.
exactly. It lives here.
Yeah. Yep.
And the more I got away from it, though, the more I was like, oh, wait a minute, though. Like, can you imagine that? Can you imagine doing or having surgery done on you because you're so committed to making sure that you achieve your goal that you're just like, I'm just going to destroy all of Mother Nature's plans and just do this anyway. So that's what I've been doing mostly is reading that. I still have a busted foot, so most of my time is spent on the couch. I'm doing that. And when I'm not doing that, I've been rewatching for the 45th time. That's probably an accurate number. The Sopranos, because every time I watch the show, I learn something new. I see something I didn't know before. I've been really, really, really hung up on the ending, like most people have been, because it kind of ends with just like not even a fade to black. It's just a cut to black of like, so like the main character who you in your mind, you assume he's this mob boss. He's probably going to either go to jail or he's going to die. And so he's in this restaurant with his family. And if I'm spoiling this for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's been way too long for you to have not seen it by now, but he's waiting for his family, or his family comes in, and his daughter's trying to park the car. Meanwhile, Don't Stop Believing by Journey is playing the entire time. And then his daughter comes into the bar. We assume that she's coming into the restaurant because you hear the little bell as the door opens. And so the tension is building because we've been bouncing back and forth between Tony and his family, her trying to parallel park for some strange reason. She really sucks at parallel parking, and she's just doing that.
It's not strange. If you've tried it before, you know.
Fair. It was a significantly long amount of time that she's doing this. And so it's going back and forth between that. And there's this other guy that's sitting at the bar or at the diner counter, and he gets up and goes to the bathroom. And so it's bouncing between all these moments. And then it's building to like this fever pitch of a moment. The door opens, the bell rings, and then it cuts to black. and that's the end of the series. And and so many people were so pissed off about that for so long. I was pissed, but then I stopped. But then finally the when you pay attention to all the clues that are left throughout the final season, it's pretty clear what happened.
Mm.
But you find out that in essence that Tony does die, because they do say it earlier in the season. They talk about how Bobby, one of the characters, is like, when you get shot, you probably don't even hear the shot when it takes you out. So the fact that it just cuts to black is basically from Tony's perspective of it just kind of ending, which made me kind of sad because Tony is a monster, but I also love him. So
A lovable monster.
yes, I mean, I don't know if he's lovable, but I love him because I'm kind of fucked up. But yeah, so that's what I've been up to. So today, though, we are talking about the movie Nonnas. It's by Steven Chbosky, I think is his name, with Vince Vaughn, which is always guaranteed to be at least a good time. It wasn't what I expected of Vince Vaughn, but before we jump into what exactly it's about, I want to ask this question. What did you think of it? How did you feel about it?
I very much loved it. It very
You
much
went. So sorry.
it reminded me of the kind of movie that I would watch. Like if I had a Netflix subscription and I wasn't stealing my sister's very sneakily for this episode. It's exactly the kind of story that I would watch and I would love. It was like no pun intended. You'll realize the pun once we get into it, but it was like comfort food to me.
Fair. You know what's funny though? I watched this and that was exactly the thought I had in mind. Not that's comfort food. What I had in mind was Jaylon. This is Jaylon's movie. This is the
Yes.
movie that you have to give to Jaylon to appease her after all of the horrible, traumatic movies that we put her through this season. This is the one. This is the perfect one. I was watching it and I was just like, oh yeah, she's gonna love this. So the fact that you said you loved it, I was like, yes, I know Jaylon. I know her.
You called
I
it.
know my co-host. I know her.
You
So
called.
yeah. So I really like this movie too. I'm not the heartwarming type of moviegoer. I don't typically like those kinds of films per se. Not always against them because I have a few in my back pocket that I very, very much enjoy. But this one crept up on me because I was kind of expecting it to be like a comedy type of thing. You know, I saw Vince Vaughn, so I was thinking, oh, this is gonna be, a funny thing where he's like, hanging out with old women or something. I don't know. And like I tried not to watch too much. I watched the trailer and I think I watched like maybe 10 seconds of the trailer, and I was like, okay, let me not ruin it for myself. Let me just watch it and see what happens. And so I watched it and I was like, oh no, I really, really, really like this movie. This is really, really good. So I was like, yeah, the only person I know who I think Charles would probably have liked this too, but I was like, I know Jaylon will like it, and I think we'll have a good conversation about it. So we'll do that. So we're gonna jump on in. First, we'll give you a quick summary, quick breakdown of what the movie's about. It's a man who's down on his luck returns home and rediscovers purpose by helping his neighborhood's immigrant grandmothers turn their home cooked meals into a booming business. And that's pretty much what the movie is about. And it's based off a true story.
Yep.
I
That
found
was another thing. I knew about this story before I watched this movie because it was a
Really?
story that I had stumbled across on social media like a year or two ago.
Okay. That's crazy. Yeah, because I didn't know. I did not. I mean, I knew it once I saw it in the credits, and I think I said it in the trailer. It said based on true story in the trailer. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I was like, cool. And then the more I watched the movie, the more I got interested in it. And I was like, and then I went and Googled and started looking up, and I was like, oh. And I got kind of pissed off, like viscerally pissed off, because I was like, I lived in Jersey for many, many years, and I could have. And I've been in Staten Island a couple times. So I had friends that live in Staten Island. One of my best friends lives in Staten Island right now. And I was like, I could have gone. I could have gone to this restaurant and then tried this out. But it's like I'm moving further and further away from this delightful food. Who knows? Maybe he'll turn it into I doubt he'll turn. Then it won't be what it is if he turn it into a franchise. But still, I love movies that are true stories generally, especially when the person who did it or is alive. Still, I always like that, especially like in this one, he's the guy who made it is in the movie, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like he got to be in the movie. That's such a cool thing. I didn't read the production notes or anything, so I don't know if they actually filmed in the restaurant for the whole thing. I know that there were parts of it that was there, but it's a restaurant that's like right now it's only open 2 days a week, I think, from what
Mm,
from my Google research, which I've always that's my other thing. That's my other belief wholeheartedly when it comes to restaurants. The less days the restaurant is open and the earlier it closes, the better the food is. I don't
oh,
know
yeah,
why. It's just the
yeah,
way that it is. It's the rules. It's the rules.
it is.
If you're open 7 days a week and open to 10 o'clock, your food is trash. That's just the way.
We will still eat it. We will still buy it.
Yes.
We'll eat it because
Don't
Taco
worry,
Bell.
we'll still eat your
But
trash. Yes, that is a complete sentence right there. Because Taco Bell. I believe in that wholeheartedly. But I agree with you. This movie is wholeheartedly a comfort food type of movie. It's the kind of movie that you watch with your parents and don't feel embarrassed about anything that's happening. Those are always good. Those are always good. Everyone knows I grew up with a very religious mom, and there were very few movies that I could put on that I liked that my mom would be like, okay, I'll sit here and watch it. So this is one of those movies where it's like, or I could just call my mom and be like, oh, mom, check this one out and go watch it because I know you'll love this. This was one of those. I will never get over. Have you ever seen the movie 8 Mile?
I haven't, but it is one that we've talked about.
Okay, so I saw 8 Mile with my mom, and for context, for those who don't know, 8 Mile is the movie starring Eminem, so that should tell you enough. And she said, I will watch this with you as long as you fast forward or mute all the swears. When I tell you that I fast forward, that the amount of time that the movie 8 Mile is without swears is probably like an hour and 15 minutes for a 2-hour movie. I am telling you, it was just, yeah, I had decided then and there I will never watch a movie with my mom that she didn't pick again. Uh,
Oh, that's dedication right there. You know, they used to have streaming services that my family would make use of that it was software that could just pick out
yeah,
those things that you didn't want.
yeah, I've heard of that.
And yeah, it was such a great idea. I wish that production companies didn't throw such a fit about that existing because honestly, it would expand your audiences in a lot of great ways and create some of those family connections that we're looking for in the art of movies.
Mm, that's
But,
true.
it limits it when you have some audiences that are okay with some things and some audiences that aren't. So the message is still for everyone, but I feel like if you just make that an option to make more people comfortable watching your movies, then you'll be doing some of that good work that you were trying to do in making this media in the first place, which is create those connections between families and friends. And
For
yeah.
sure.
Anyway, I'm off my
More
soapbox.
inclusive media, I think, is important.
Yes. Yeah.
For sure. I agree with that. I agree with that. I myself may not watch it, but I do think that having more stuff that I could watch with people. I don't have like kids in my life or anything like that, but if I did, I would like to have more options for them that we could watch that we could all enjoy. Because I
Yeah.
think I know what you're talking about. Like that is, I think it's one of those programs where it's like you could put in the words that you don't want, having it automatically
Yeah.
censors it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you could
But it
watch
wasn't
stuff, but
even
then it does that.
Yeah, and it wasn't even with just swear words too, because like that's a very legitimate. Some people just
Mhm.
are not comfortable hearing that language, but there's also, I mean, we're in a mental health aware
True.
society-ish now. So I feel like there's enough options for triggers that you can just cut out entirely and you can enjoy a story without being triggered by certain things that are in it.
That's
Um
true. That's probably true. They should do I don't know, is that still around?
No, it was I believe the company who did it used to be called VidAngel, turned into Angel Studios now, which is the studio that made the Wingfeather Saga's short TV show.
Hmm.
So that's why I'm in the know with that one. VidAngel got shut down because all the production companies were like, no, even though you're paying money buying the discs every time you use these sensors, we still don't like it.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was
So
sad.
the question then becomes why did we pick a film like this? And so beyond the fact that the idea of good food is always a plus.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I love food. I think it's good,
same.
especially home cooked things. But I think another interesting thing about this one is a story that centers on elders, especially the matriarchs. I think that's really cool within itself. I actually like stories where I hate saying old people because I feel it's rude, but like here, I'll use the term I use with my mom all the time. Those on their sunset cruises. Um I feel like stories about them are always interesting, especially ones where they're going on some kind of adventure, whether it be like a literal or adventure or more of an existential adventure or a whatever. Those are really cool. I think that like it's one of the reasons why movies like Up are really cool. People like Up
I
so
was going to
much.
bring that up.
Yeah. So I love that. And then like I just think we like media with old people in general, like
If
Golden
you
Girls.
if you think of it from the perspective of what makes us rich is how many stories we have carried and picked
Mm,
up along life, then older people are the richest people in the world because they carry so many more stories because they've existed so much longer on this planet and
that's true.
interacted with so many more people and more adventures.
That's very true. That's true. I could see that. I could see that. This particular story is kind of special because it is kind of these although the main character is Vince Vaughn's character, the real meat and potatoes, my favorite phrase, is and it's perfect for the yes, it's perfect for this episode, but the real meat and potatoes are the four grandmothers because I feel like they were the real heart and soul of the story and them kind of against the odds. I also really appreciated this story as a entrepreneur,
Oh, yeah, for
you
sure.
know? Like and I wondered and I was gonna ask you too, did you feel that way? Because I don't know if you classify yourself as an entrepreneur per se, but you do a lot of entrepreneurial you're doing entrepreneurial things.
I will say I never wanted to classify myself as an entrepreneur because I took an entrepreneur in business class in high school and I realized how much my personality was not cut out for that lifestyle. But I
Mm.
have inadvertently still been handed entrepreneurialism in my life path.
This was your destiny, whether you liked it or not.
It was. So yes, I do consider myself an entrepreneur and it definitely hit me in that way too of you really just need such a crazy dream and then an unbelievable ability and tenacity to not give up even when everything is set out to discourage you.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think also I would add to that you need a team too.
Yeah,
You have to, like I know that by the nature of the term entrepreneur as it is culturally accepted is oftentimes seen in a way where people are like, "I go it alone, I hustle on my own, I grind myself." But, real entrepreneurs are yeah, the real entrepreneurs are genuinely surrounded by people who can help them do it. I don't think Vince Vaughn's character would have gotten anywhere without I mean, his entire restaurant's concept was built off of the existence having to have the existence of other people. But even
right.
beyond that, just kind of the surviving the ups and downs, the setbacks, the things that just
Yeah.
kind of blew up in his face, you had to have those people that were there. And those freaking grandmothers who just were willing to stick it out even when no one was
Yes.
coming was just so I was like,
Yep.
oh, that's my team. It's like
Yes.
I'm Vince Vaughn's character and that, those and I was like my Ober team are my old ladies.
Yes. I take that as a compliment, but also it was encouraging to see a story like that and see that faith have a payoff, even when everything seemed set against them, but having their efforts have a payoff. But to your point, I think also having characters or having entrepreneurs needing a team is because genius doesn't thrive on your own. Of genius is that it's the team is great, the whole is greater than the individual.
Yeah.
So it takes us bouncing ideas off of each other. It takes someone being able to come up with the idea. If they won't come to us, bring the food to them. It
Yeah.
takes people being able to bring their different skills, like the cousin or brother who is a contractor.
Yeah.
You need different skills, and it's the magic happens when you combine all those things to make the whole be something that no one could accomplish on their own.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. Here's a question. What was your first emotional reaction to Nonnas?
As, like, the first scene that got an emotional reaction from me or
Yeah.
my once the movie was done, what I felt
Yeah,
immediately
I
after.
guess I guess that. I guess, like, when credits roll, you're sitting back, you're done with it. What are you feeling?
I felt like it was a refreshing call back to the stories that matter in life because I think that some of the most powerful scenes in that film were the Nonas being able to say, "We are the ones who carry our family's stories." And it is extremely devastating when the entire world treats you like you're discarded and you don't matter when you have sacrificed your entire life to carry these stories. So I feel like this film that shows the importance of matriarchs and elders and preserving the real soul behind why we do what we do is something that is so refreshing and so needed in our world today, because we're all obsessed with stories that, they matter, they have good messages to them, but what stories really matter to us? What really speaks to our souls? And how do we nourish our souls so that we can continue to tell stories?
That I agree with that. I think that that makes a lot of sense. I felt for me, I think when I finished watching this, it was my first emotional reaction was this one hit me in the heart. It made me miss my grandmother.
Mm,
I think. And, because this is a big part of this movie is culture. It's particularly at, when the restaurant opened, it was about Italian mothers, grandmothers. I know that now it's open to all grandmothers from all around the world to bring their own cultures to it, which is within itself is a beautiful and brilliant concept.
yes.
But I thought about that. I thought about, like, watching those grandmothers cook, and I was thinking about my grandmother. I was like, to this day, I think about my grandmother's biscuits, and, like, when I used to visit my grandmother in Georgia, we'd go there, and she'd make breakfast every morning, and so it would be biscuits and bacon and eggs and stuff like that, and the special syrup, I don't even know where she got it from to this day, and now she's gone, so I can't really ask her, but, like, I
Yeah.
always remember that, and she would do that every day. Like, she would get up whenever we were there. She did this even when we weren't there. This was just what she did. She would just get up, she'd go walk around the track for I think 2, 3 miles just to get moving. Then she'd come home and cook. And by the time you woken up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, she's already back, done her walk, did all of that, and it's cooked food. And then is like in her hair salon doing that she owned. My grandmother had a hair salon that was attached to her house. That was her business. So she was already in the hair salon with her people. I'd get up at 8, and by that time, my slacker ass had missed her
Wow.
journey around the track, her cooking breakfast, and getting showered, dressed, and cutting people's hair all by 8 o'clock. But I could watching that movie, I could still taste the homemade biscuits that she would make. She didn't, my grandmother didn't do. That's why I was watching them when they were like doing like the real recipe. They were like taking fresh
Yep.
ingredients and making stuff. Like my grandmother didn't do the whole go to the grocery store and buy the Pillsbury pop open biscuits. She went, made flour and put it together and did that. And she did this every morning. I was like, how do you do? It's like, meanwhile, I'm struggling to get out of the bed alive.
Yeah. This is too real.
So it's like, it really reminded me of that and just the power of that of that culture that comes with it. So it really made me miss my grandma. It really made me miss her cooking, um, and just her in general. Because that was one of the cool things too, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go along. That whole each grandmother had their own backstory and their own stuff that was kind of going on. And so, like I said, when you think about thought about my grandmother had hers. Like my grandmother raised three, I think she was raising three or four kids while going to school. She would leave her kids in Valdosta, and she would go on the weekend. She would travel to Atlanta, and she would do her classes, and then come back and do that. And so she had this whole life, and so this movie was more about that to me. The grandmother's lives was more interesting to me than even yes, the movie's about Joe and his journey of trying to open this up, but I felt like the movie was really about these grandmothers, because I really appreciated that scene with the four of them were sitting
Yes.
down and drinking and having that conversation. You were
Yep.
learning a little about each one of them. I was like, oh, this is like one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
For sure. For sure. That was a powerful one.
But yeah, so that's what I was thinking as far as what I felt.
Mhm.
Was there anything that surprised you about it?
That's a good question, because I feel like I was kind of thinking this as I was watching. I was thinking it's a very predictable story, but that doesn't make it any less good. Even with once we got into learning about the backstory, like the specific story that each Nona carried, I think that even in that you knew to expect the unexpected, because you never look at someone and just think that what you see now is the sum of every single version of them that has ever existed in their lives. So I think that even in the ways that it was unexpected and it did surprise you, it was very good surprises. Okay. The one thing that did surprise me was that the letter from Joey's mother that he finally opened actually contained the family recipes, because I was not expecting
I wasn't either.
I was not expecting the family recipes to actually be given, because most of the time they do remain a secret, for the reason being that it's not so special if it's something that you can replicate without this person. So,
Mm.
I was not expecting that. It hit powerfully, but I wasn't expecting that.
But so were you disappointed by it though? Or were you happy with it?
I can't tell if I was disappointed or not, because again, like, so my culture, my heritage is that my grandmother she came from Turkey, and Greek Turkish cooking culture is very much similar to this Italian culture. And my aunt is actually Italian. So I grew up with this kind of cooking culture, and I understand like the personality and the toughness of these Nonnas. I know, I can testify to. That is very much real life. And so I feel like I have been a part of these cultures. This is part of my heritage, and I related to it more so through that. It was actually really interesting because just this past weekend, we met a family and went to have dinner with them, and I was making some of the Turkish recipes that I remember my grandmother making for me when I was very young. She passed away when I was 12, but I can still remember her piaz and how she would make it for me. And she'd bring it out to me and then let me eat a spoonful out of the bowl to try it. And I can remember all these things, and it's special to me now that I have a handwritten recipe to make it the way that she made it. I still can't make it the same way she did, because the recipe was very much like scoop of this, scoop of that, add
Yeah.
this, add that, no amounts. But it's still a very special thing. So in my mind, like, I don't know, because it made such an emotional impact on me, I wanted it to happen that he did get those family recipes. But for the culture of it and just the strictness of being realistic, being true to keeping the family recipes a secret, I want to be upset at it, but I'm really not.
Okay. That's fair. That is fair. I wasn't disappointed. I was actually pleasantly surprised by it. Partially because it was a validation for me. Um, because I don't know if you remember the story I wrote, Strange Fruit.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
okay, and so for me, I always wonder, and that one's more of a mystery. But the thing is, and I'm kind of giving the ending away, which is weird because I did want to shoot it one day and make it, but whatever. But like the message and the key to solving the entire mystery is all in that one Snapchat message that the main character refuses to open out of his fear of what it's going to say.
Yep.
Um, and then but it's at the end when he actually opens it, it puts everything together for him as to what really happened. And so this was, it reminded me of exactly that, of like, this is a main character who is actively avoiding pain, which is such a human thing to do. I know
Yeah.
this from personal experience. There are voicemails that I have refused to listen to this day because I'm terrified of what the person is going to say. Or just like conversations you refuse to start because you're worried about how it's going to end. And so the idea of like grieving someone who you love so much and then seeing the last thing that they will say to you, it's like, oh man,
It is
I can
different.
see that. I can see you avoiding that. And then it turns out that it's like the most amazing thing that it could ever be that the person could have said to you.
Yep.
And in this case, it's, the recipe that he's kind of been chasing as it's kind of like a subplot of the whole movie. He's been kind of chasing this whole time. It was like, honestly, it was the emotional thread of the whole movie. The recipe, I think it's a really great lesson for writers to learn of ways to tie an emotional thread together with what might, in the mystery game is called a MacGuffin, but like where you took this letter and you tied the emotional thread of his own grief to it, and we didn't even realize, like, we knew that the letter was tied to his emotional grief. That part you knew because he says that. But the whole him looking for the recipe is it was kind of the writer's way of reminding us, remember that letter he's got, remember this emotional trauma that this emotional thing he's holding on to, without telling us that that's what he's doing. And then the moment he opens the letter and he reads the recipe, and it's like, and it's just that one thing he's been searching for this whole movie is connected to the one thing he refused to face this whole movie.
Yep.
It's kind of like, oh, chef's kiss, no pun intended.
storytelling, that's the emotional payoff that you really love. Even if you want to be a stickler in real life, like no one would give me the secret family
Yes.
recipes. But this is proof that really good storytelling techniques can trump even the worst sticklers out there.
Yes, for sure. So if you want to be a Krabby Patty, about the whole thing, it's fine, but it will still make you cry just a little bit. So yeah, so I mean, yeah, I thought that was a really awesome thing. So we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into it. First thing I want to talk about here is culture as a legacy, how food, family, immigrant identity are all passed down like heirlooms, and I think that's such an interesting thing because you talk about that too. You talk about you've you've sprinkled in your heritage and your history so much on this podcast, um, without ever going like super deep on it. It's always been kind of like a subplot of its own to the podcast. Shaylon has an interesting history and family and legacy and all these other things, and it's like it's a side quest that if you go back and we edit it all together, you might get a full story.
You won't, but that's okay.
But yeah, so I'm interested in that. I'm interested in your history, your heritage as far as like how that's been passed down to you. How have you like connected with it? Do you find yourself connecting with it on like an everyday basis?
I don't necessarily find myself connecting to it on an everyday basis, aside from the fact that I was named with a Turkish name to help me stay connected to that part of my heritage. It's still something that as I was growing up, by the time I was old enough to appreciate it, all of the grandparents and the family members that were old enough to pass it down to me firsthand had already passed away or my family had moved away from. So I always felt this great sense of loss that I didn't feel an appreciation or a connection for my heritage while I had a chance to do so. But even with my dad, because he was born here in the US. His brother was born in Turkey, but his brother is 20 years older than him. So there was a huge gap between the cultural experience that his brother had and the cultural experience that my dad was brought up in. Because he was raised in a very American culture. His father was assassinated. He was a Turkish dignitary, and his father was assassinated when he was 14. So he very much he was involved in the Turkish American culture. His father created the Turkish American Culture Society in Boston.
Oh wow.
But that wasn't necessarily a part of my dad's story anymore after his father passed away. And I can still remember the little piece that my dad carried, even though he never quite learned the Turkish language. He never was immersed as much as I think he wanted to be in the culture. He always jokes that he knows kitchen Turkish because the Turkish language and the culture that he did pick up was around how his mother used to work in the kitchen.
Mm.
And I still remember her house she had a very large house, but the kitchen that she used, it was like a very old-fashioned house. So the actual kitchen was downstairs, and then there was a butler kitchen attached to the dining room. But
Oh wow.
whenever they would have Turkish dignitaries over or Massachusetts legislators and all that, they would have these family meals in their dining room, and she would cook entire feasts in this tiny little butler's kitchen. And so that was just something that my dad carried. That's just kind of like a family joke now. It's like we know kitchen Turkish because that's the part of the legacy that did survive through all of this other loss and all the other ways that the American culture kind of bled away the culture of immigrants that we came with. So I think that that alone is testament to how powerful food is because it is an everyday thing that you can be connected to. It very, very literally nourishes you. It nourishes not only your body, but also your soul. So I've always thought of and this is even from my very American upbringing, that's boring, but I had a very American upbringing. And even in that, there were so many times where my mother having a chronic illness, she couldn't handle American food that had so many chemicals and toxins and had lost its nourishment. So I feel like food in general is such a cultural thing that the American culture has lost or never had to begin with. When you have a culture who doesn't value food, you have a culture who doesn't value their richness and their nourishment or anything deeper than just being a human doing as opposed to being a human being.
Mhm.
So I see that as that's why I love learning about different cultures through their food because it's a way that I can connect to a culture that I never had in
Mhm.
my own upbringing with, or the American culture in general is lacking, I will say.
Hmm.
So those are kind of some disjointed thoughts on it. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wanted to know more, and I do, and I like that. It's a lot. It's a lot of. It was very helpful to answer the question, and I think you're right about. I think you're right about culture as a American society because I feel like a lot of people say like America is like a big melting pot of cultures, and if we're being really honest, it's like it's stolen ingredients that are put into this big stew, which is why which is why maybe it's a little bit sour a lot of the times. But I think that you get this very one. I think it's really cool from your background being a generation or two removed from real I don't wanna say real life immigrants, but, like, in essence,
Yeah.
you're only a couple generations removed from immigrants, and so they have that in an s that in a sense is baked right into your identity in a way that isn't because like you meet some people in America and they're like, "Oh, I'm Irish or I'm from I don't know, I'm Scottish," but you're like I don't know, their great grandfather was like from there. It's like, but like I love meeting people that it's like, no, my grandmother was from a different country, or you know what I mean, or my mom or dad was from a different country because I feel like you get a much richer understanding of one. There's a level of great gratitude that you get that you don't get when you're so far removed from people that struggle to get here. But two, I think that your sense of culture, even if you didn't have a chance to like really dig in and be like as connected to it as you may have wanted to, there is a level of connection that you have to your culture that someone who's a little bit further removed might not have. And I do like that. I think that's a pretty cool thing to be able to say.
Enough to know I think my perspective is I'm grateful for the perspective that I do have because it's enough to know what we're missing in not appreciating the stories that came before us and
Mhm.
not honoring those stories, but also to not be a stickler about, well, you're not being 100% authentic because you didn't do this, this, and this,
Mhm.
or you didn't actually experience this, this, and this. So your story doesn't count.
Yeah,
I can
I can see that
appreciate every story is valuable, even if
for
it's
sure.
not as authentic as someone who has a different story thinks it should be, which is
That's
another
fair.
it's an interesting dynamic because it's almost like it feeds into you're not minority enough to be minority, and so your story doesn't count. But your story
That's
does still count. And having it be a melting pot is it shouldn't be what it's become, which is everyone's story subtracts from the whole. The melting pot effect should be we are all richer because of these stories, because
mm,
we have more stories. So let's learn how to honor each other's stories instead of trying to discount the stories that we feel like aren't as important as our own.
that makes a lot of sense. It's like if you think about it from the perspective of in line with the theme of the episode, the chef, so to speak. Imagine a chef going to a stew and then trying to spoon out the ingredients they don't like after it's already been mixed into the thing and just being like, ah,
Yeah.
no, not too much paprika. I want it gone.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what seems to happen right now in our society, but I think part of the fact that all of those ingredients are there is what can make it great if it allowed itself to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely get that, and I do understand I understand the importance of valuing one's culture, and American culture has things that it can be proud of for sure. Not a lot, but it does have some, and when it comes to food specifically, though, that's
No.
why I think so much of our food is chemical induced and lacks nutrients and all that other stuff because we live in a capitalist society, and so our whole thing is about what's going to make the food taste the best. That's going to make people buy it. Even if it means killing everything that's good about it. And I think that's an interesting thing, and I think that's why the restaurant concept works so well because it does kinda remove that issue. For me, it's the same way for culture. My great-grandmother was, from what I understand, was a slave, my great-grandmother. So, like, I'm only a few I'm only a few generations separated from slavery, which within itself had its own culture, had its
Yeah,
own things like people who love soul food, for instance. Soul food itself stems from slavery. It's the all the food that the slave owners didn't want, all the stuff that they considered as beneath them to eat, they threw out and gave to black people. Black people salvaged that and turned it into a delicacy that is now considered and sought after throughout this country by so many different cultures.
yeah,
People love soul food. I've never met a person who doesn't like soul
yeah,
food. So, and that's a testament. I think food itself within culture sometimes can be a testament to the not just the culture, but the spirit and philosophy of a culture or of a group of
sure.
people. With like I said, with black people, a lot of their food is a testament to their resilience and their ability to survive. I think with Italians, for instance, as you see in this movie, it's their testament to the value of family and having a large group of large portions always because they want to make sure everybody has enough to eat and everybody's eating together. Family and the family style restaurant. I've never done it. I've never participated. Like I've never gone to a restaurant that was family style.
Mhm.
Besides maybe if you count buffets as family style, which
Mm, it's a little
it's
different.
pushing the line,
Yeah.
I think.
I think we're
It's
going more into, like, food as efficiency as opposed to food as soul.
as food as a family yeah, it's less of food as a family experience. But I do wanna try that, and that's fully being aware that my introverted self is saying that. I think that the foodie in me is bigger than the introvert in me, so I might be willing to participate in a family style dinner, like that. But I do really like that, but that's the Italian, thing, and then there's so you can tell a lot about a group's whether it be a race or an ethnicity. You can tell a lot about their culture by their food. And so even when you talk about Turkish food and the way that they did that, same with Jewish folks and the way that they eat and the way that they have their meals. I love that. I do like that. I like the idea of being able to see, like I said, you can learn a lot about a culture and the people of it based on how they eat. Which for
Yeah.
you writers out there, when you're doing your world building,
Yes.
spend a little bit more time on your food for this reason.
Yes, that's a very good point. I think it's we don't often appreciate this is something that, again, matriarchs will carry a lot heavier, a lot more of the weight of than the general population gives credit to. But historically, in every culture, the story around food, not only is it something that happens 3 times a day and is very central to everything else that happens culturally. So food as a story is very important. But not only that, historically, women would spend most of their days preparing food for these events, for these meals throughout the day, and then also for these celebrations that would happen. So if you think of the percentage of someone's story that centers around food, it's a very large percentage.
Why do you think they took their time so much?
I think that's also something that American culture is lacking because, again, we've become so much about efficiency that
Instant
we become
gratification too.
yeah, we've become human doings instead of human beings. Someone is valuable for how much they can do in society as opposed to someone is valuable for how much they can impact the soul of society. And people knew, like with food, I mean, you can spend all day cooking a meal that's gone in 5 minutes. And as women who have cooked for large families, you know the frustration of that because then you just have to come up with something else to slave away for hours cooking for the next meal. But there's something so powerful to that because it's something that is so central to what, again, it very literally nourishes the people that you love. It's your soul nourishing someone else's soul. And when you take your time with it, it does become a soul thing. It's not just a machine that is doing something so that you can do something. It's something a lot deeper than that. And I think everything that goes deeper than the surface level that does speak to the soul is inherently more valuable because it has reverberates throughout culture, throughout time and history a lot louder.
I agree with that. First of all, I love that saying, and I'm gonna steal it. It's gonna be stolen. Of we're becoming human doings and being human beings.
I stole it from someone. So that's okay.
Well, then good. Yeah. Well, we're stealing it. It's now adopted. But I do think that's a really good a good way of thinking about things, and I wonder this brings up sorry, we may rabbit hole a little bit here, but, like, you start to think about the invention of why is it that progress, as cool as it is oftentimes the thing that destroys us more?
Very true. This is another reason why I've had such a hard time appreciating technology. I always think that if I was born in the pioneer colonial era, I would have been a much better personality fit for that slower time period.
That's yeah, because I wonder that because it's like, yeah, people used to spend all day cooking, like, in, like, the 50s and 60s, and this is not one of those, life was better then type of statements, but, like, in the 50s and 60s, you had women, that would stay home, and that's not what I'm advocating for either, but
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 something
but you would
valuable to that we're not connected to anymore. There's
right,
something valuable about growing your own food, knowing where it comes from,
right,
and
and so, yeah,
having
you
that.
would have that.
Yeah.
You'd have that, you'd have somebody that would be at home and grow their own food. They would spend, if not all day, a big chunk of the day preparing the dinner for later on in the night for the evening, and it would be warm and everything by the time that the husband got home because they had been making it all day.
Yeah.
Or when you're making, like or you have, like, whole families and you're putting all this stuff and you're working on whatever, and then the microwave came,
Yeah.
and suddenly we were just like,
Mhm.
I can make dinner in 3 hours, or I can make dinner in 3 minutes. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
I think and I mean, I think that it makes sense because the more technology came to be, the more stuff there was to see, there was more stuff for us to go and do. So the idea of spending any significant amount of time in one location to do one thing when there's so much more to go out there and do just became inefficient for us. That's the same reason why so many people don't read these days. It's like I could sit here. There was a genuine time where people sat down and read it's like, I'm going to go home tonight and I'm not going to watch a movie. I'm going to read a book. And I'm going to do that. And I know people still do it, but there are many people who don't. Most people don't because it's like, oh, there's so much stuff to watch, so many things, so much stuff on TikTok, so many movies I can be watching. I just don't have time for it. I'd love to. I'd rather be doing these things. And the more that these things are existing, the more things that we create, the more we lose sight of the ability to slow down and just kind of enjoy the moment. I wonder if it's more of a question of, is it that technology and its progress is ruining us as a society, or is it just us curmudgeon individuals who are just so used to the past that we're unwilling and unable to adapt to the possibility of things moving faster?
That's a very interesting question. I think everyone might have a different answer. From my perspective, I can see the reason why we're not using the power of technology responsibly, and it's
Mm,
ending up subtracting from the meaning of our lives as opposed to adding meaning to our lives. I think it has to do with we're not honoring the stories that came before us because I mean, speaking from the perspective of a woman who had seen this feminist era of everyone saying, "We don't wanna be home cooking all day." But there was something that mattered in that work. There was something so important in that work that I mean, we've been trying for a few generations now, we can't find that meaning anywhere else. So, there's something about just we haven't gotten an appreciation for the people who came before us that actually knew how to exist in this world, how to be in this world and be connected to the present moment. So I think that technology has just become a great distraction for us. And it's also kind of fed our hubris of thinking that we can tell a better story and then forgetting to honor the story of everyone who came before us.
I can see that. I can see that. I would say that for me, if there was a spectrum of, like, where we fall, I lean more into the idea of progress. I lean more into the idea of change and technology and all those types of things. Also, coming from the cultural perspective in which I have on this country in this world,
Hmm.
what people were doing in the 50s and 60s paints a very different picture to me as to what people were doing with their time than it
Yep.
does to other people. So for me, it was like, oh, I get to sit around for 6 or 7, 8 hours a day contemplating, yes, I'm making a home and I'm doing this, or I'm at work while my wife is doing these other things, but I'm also hating other people who are different than me and spending a lot of time focusing on that. However, as technology has advanced, now people can just hate people much faster. And so maybe technology has nothing to do with who we are as people, because maybe just human beings themselves fuck shit up no matter where we go.
Oh, for sure.
and that's just how we do it. But I do genuinely think that the idea of progress being something we're so afraid of is an interesting concept. I think that there has to be a happy balance between cultural remembrance and honor and the speed of progress. If we could find a way to preserve those two, because I don't think that we can't have both. I don't think we have figured out how to have both.
Yeah.
But I mean, to an extent, yes, we have. We've found ways to capture people's stories and maintain them for long periods of time, and in more efficient ways. We used to have picture frames, and photo albums to maintain our memories. Now we have camera rolls in our cell phones that hold far more pictures and do far more things, or we have videos that go to the cloud that we can hold all of our data forever. So the
Can't be destroyed
progress.
by fire or floods or anything.
Exactly. So progress has its benefits, and it can honor culture. It can honor past. I just think we have to figure out the balance as human beings, how to hold space for both.
Yeah.
I think.
I think there's definitely a difference between being scared of progress versus being scared of how humans will use progress. Because again, it comes down to with great power comes great responsibility. And I just haven't seen an example in history where humanity in general has been able to handle the responsibility of being handed so much power. So
That's
again, technology is great. It's created for great reasons, but you're always going to have that human nature that's going to come in and, as you said, mess everything up because
that's
that's just what we do in our selfish humanity. It's so much in our DNA to forget. And so I think that we do need a new generation of people who are able to use the power of technology to do important things like immortalize these stories, share these stories to a wider audience so that we have a wider appreciation in our melting pot. Because, in the past, we were only able to appreciate the culture and the stories of people that we were within physical connection with. Now that we have technology, we're able to appreciate the stories and cultures of people who have had wildly different upbringings than us all across the globe.
true.
So we just need more people who are able to use technology to promote things that are meaningful instead of getting distracted from the true meaning of life by the fast pace of technology.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that that does make sense. And I agree with the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing, because you are in essence, but we are the creators of that. It's like we have all this good intentions. Like you said, we have good intentions as human beings. We create these things, these wonderful things, the cloud, these other things. It's like, oh, this is a great way for we'll never have to worry about losing, not just documents, but we'll never have to worry about losing our memories or the things that we have to disasters or things like that. But at the same time, we're kind of at the same time, while we're figuring out ways to preserve, we're also figuring out ways to destroy. The weird thing about it, when you think about, and I know this is kind of a weird rabbit hole we're going to, but I think it all is relevant.
For
But
sure.
like, for instance, let's say we talk about AI for a second, and we talk about the impact that AI has on the environment.
Hmm.
And while AI is becoming a fantastic tool to help us in our progress as human beings. It is creating opportunities. It's creating things for people that we otherwise wouldn't have. It's doing amazing things. Meanwhile, this technological advancement is destroying our environment. So as we become better, as we create space for new and more positive experiences for ourselves, we are also destroying ourselves at the exact same time. It's almost like we're burning one end of our. I want to
Yeah.
say we're burning it at both ends, but in reality, it's like we're building on one end. It's like building the biggest dynamite stick in the world.
Yeah.
And while we're building it, we lit a wick over here somewhere, and it's continuously burning as we're building and building. And so as we go, we're closer and closer to our own doom, but also building. I just think that's kind of a fascinating
Hmm.
perspective, or just a view on all of this. Also, I realize this now, I'm going to make a spoof movie that's going to be like, if you're familiar with the movie Oppenheimer,
Hmm.
which is all about the atomic bomb being made, and I'm going to make one that's going to be about the microwave and how,
Yeah.
when the microwave was built, it completely destroyed us as humans, because if it wasn't for the microwave, there would be no TikTok. So,
I'm here for
yeah, it's going to
I will be
star
looking
Tom
forward to this
Holland
as I heat up my lunch in the microwave.
as you make your popcorn in your microwave to watch the movie. But yeah, so I think that that's a fascinating culture in general. I think this movie is a really interesting look at culture,
Mhm.
and how important that ultimately is. Another thing that I think this movie really does, it looks at masculinity, and it
Mm.
reframes it
Mhm.
by contrast. And I think that's a really cool thing that it does. And it's one of my favorite things about this movie, because usually in this film, in movies like this, where you have the founder of some kind of thing, and it's some cis white male who is, the savior of the neighborhood or whatever. But this was a story where that could easily have been the story. It could have been, oh, Joe comes in, you got these grandmothers who are like, having a rough time, and Joe comes in and starts a business and saves their lives. And in this story, it was more, they saved him.
Mm.
And on top of that, a story that was about a main character. The main character was a man, but yet the story was really about the matriarchs.
Mhm.
And that was kind of cool. It was a contrast within itself, and that where you take a story and you flip it on its head. So while I do agree that this story is predictable in the sense of like, oh, I can put it together and I can figure out where this is going to go, it's also kind of subverts
Mm.
many of the typical expectations in like biopic type films,
For sure.
where Hollywood centers a white man as the focal
Mhm.
point, or not even just a white man, a man in general, as the hero of the story who does whatever. And in this one, yes, they gave us a man as the focal point, but the reality is that it's really a commentary on the women in his life,
Mm.
and how important they truly are to his development as a man, which
Mm.
is also something you don't really see very
Yeah,
often.
that's fair. I would also say this is something that kind of came to me when I was watching Captain Marvel last night as part of our Marvel Universe marathon. And I started realizing that just as much as we're all tired of the trope of the white male being the savior, the protagonist savior of the entire story, I'm also tired of them framing women that way.
Mm,
The powerful woman being the savior of her entire galaxy. Because while I don't disagree that each of us have that power in us, regardless of what we look like, regardless of how stereotypical we are, because I will admit that in many ways, I myself am a stereotype,
mhm.
but we're
And that was
also,
not me agreeing, that was me just acknowledging what you said. I see how that gonna come off, and he's like, yes, you're a stereotype, you need to
I
accept it.
am though. You know this about me. Just the fact that we can send relatable memes to each other is
Fair,
proof that we're all stereotypes.
fair.
But I think that this movie very much shows the power and the deeper meaning behind a real human who can honor the stories that made him or her. Because we never just do things for ourselves, and we're never built into the capable, powerful people or humans that we are by ourselves. We're made by the stories of others, and we're inspired by the stories of others. We're driven by the stories of others. So I feel like we need to stop making stories where the hero is just the hero for himself or herself, whatever. Because if the hero is just heroic for the sake of their own name, that, I mean, sure, that might pump you up to watch a story like that. That might hype you up. That might make you excited for this character. But it's so much more powerful to recognize the stories that inform that layer you and make you a human who can do those things. So I feel like your point of what this movie in particular did with it being about a male protagonist, but it was really about the matriarchs because he knew how to honor them. I feel like a lot of that came from how much he recognized that he was who he was because of his mother and his grandmother. And so again, when you honor those stories that made you, when you honor those stories that came together to make you the amazing puzzle that you are, all the different pieces of others that you carry, it becomes so much more meaningful than just one person who can save the entire universe because they have this crazy special superpower, you know?
That does make I agree with that to an extent. What I will say though is I do understand why like women propped up as the hero of the story makes sense more. Like, and it's not a matter of race per se, but when I do say that, oh, a white man is the center of the story, it's because for so long that is all there ever was. It's
Eh.
and it's not a matter of like, it's not a matter of like, oh, we don't need any more white men. It's more a matter of like, if that's the only thing that's ever really been represented as the hero, we
For
don't
sure.
need to see more of those. We need to see more of things that we haven't seen. And women centered as the hero of the story, especially in film. and
Mhm.
in TV shows is far less common than like books, for instance. Like in a book, it feels like almost every protagonist is a woman. It feels like that. And I'm totally here for it. I'm fine with that. But since majority of our this population are not readers, and you start to go and you say, okay, well, I'm gonna watch something and I'm a little kid and I want to watch something. I'm really, really happy with a young girl being able to watch TV and say this story is about a girl that looks like me and doing these things. And I think that's kind of why it's cool. I do think, yeah, whether she's white or she's not, because there are a lot of, you know, this is again sidetrack type of thing. But like when you look at like Ironheart, for instance, which is the young, you know, teenage black girl who everybody seems to hate for whatever reason. But that I see the value in that. I see the value of having a young black woman as the hero and watching them do things other than being the victim of someone else's abuse or mistreatment or whatever, and showing them that in a world where you are often mistreated, you can be the hero.
Yes.
That's valuable. And I think we go to movies, we watch movies because we want to see ourselves in the hero themselves. As much as we like to talk about, oh, we love the villain, oh, we love bad guys, you know, and all that. As much as we say that, all of us deep down inside, I think, do want to see ourselves in the protagonist of the story. We want to see that. And so when it is just a white guy, it's like, okay, yes, a bunch of white guys are like, cool, yay, I'm represented. But the rest of us are like, we're not. And so, you know, so in this particular story here, it's oh, this is a man. It's a regular guy, and here he is. And we could, like I said, the story could have easily chosen to been about Vince Vaughn's character Joe and everything that's going on with him. And like I said, while it didn't lose sight of its protagonist, and it didn't lose sight of it. We always knew whose story it was. It still did a really good job of allowing the world around him to very much be about matriarchs. And I think that is what really made it stand out to me.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that you brought that up. Also, just to plug the other rabbit hole we went down in a different episode about the power of representation and how necessary that is. We did explore that nuance as well. So this is just the other side of the coin of that conversation.
Fair, fair. So I'm gonna ask one last question before we go into one of our new segments that we have, which you guys will see more of in the new season. But before that, I want to know: is there anything you felt this story got wrong or could have been better?
And this is something that, again, because I am not as authentically connected to these cultures as I wish I were, I feel like I cannot speak to certain cultural things that it got wrong. However, I feel like it did get a lot of cultural things right, like watching the Italian grandmothers argue about whose region of Italy was better was very much, and the comment of, no, this isn't, they just have to fight it out. This is their process. Like, very much, I saw the reality of that. I was like, I know this to be true. But yeah, I feel like I can't necessarily speak to anything that culturally it got wrong. I do feel like it got a lot of things right. And as far as being a story that connected on a deep emotional level, I also will say that I don't think it got anything wrong because it did connect so deeply with me on an emotional level. So
Mm.
I feel like I'm not in a position to say that it got anything wrong.
Fair, fair. I also can't say that culturally that it did anything wrong. I don't know. I can say from a storyteller perspective, this movie was a 9 out of 10. And only a 9 out of 10 because I refuse to give a 10 out of 10 to almost anything because nothing is ever perfect. However, actually I would give it a 10 out of 10 just because, speaking of Sopranos, the therapist in Sopranos, so Dr. Melfi from The Sopranos and Adriana, who I skipped a whole season of The Sopranos just to not watch her die. So, like, yes, I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times, but like this past watch, I was like, I can't, my heart can't take her dying. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I'm skipping the whole season. But like both of them were in this movie. So Dr. Melfi, Tony Soprano's therapist, is one of the grandmothers. She is the one who I think was from Sicily. And I love her in everything. I loved her in The Goodfellas. I loved her in everything. But she's always playing an Italian something. And so I love that. And the woman that played Adriana in Sopranos was the contractor's wife, who I also love. I forget both of their names, so please forgive me. But they were in it, so that automatically jumped it up to a 10. I kind of expected to see Jon Favreau, and I didn't, so that was a little disappointing. I'm just kidding. Um, but yeah, so that would be it. But yeah, I would give this movie a 10 out of 10. But if I'm gonna be fair to the fact that I didn't give, I wouldn't give like what is it? A Few Good Men.
Okay, yeah.
Since I wouldn't give that 10 stars, I can't give this one 10 stars because that would just be ridiculous. So we're gonna roll out this new segment as we start to wrap things up here. And this is a segment that, like I said, in the new season it'll alternate. We wanted to give Jaylon her own little corner of the podcast where she can just share her thoughts as the resident newcomer to many of the things we've watched, and kind of if we feel like she is the in for you guys, the audience, who also have not seen it. I'm learning this more and more, Jaylon. The more people I talk to about things, the more I find they're like, no, I've never seen that. No, I've never read that. No, I've never seen that. And I'm like, oh, I thought this was just Jaylon, but it's like, no, it's there's a lot of people who have it. I clearly have a problem with
There's a lot
consumption.
of media in this world to
It's true.
experience,
That
and
is true.
you can't
I
expect it all.
I have a consumption problem. I accept this now. I've consumed way too much, and everyone else is like normal, and they're like, "No, I haven't seen that. I have a life." So, like, I'm sorry, I'm a hermit. I don't. But so, Jaylon, you now will represent that part of our audience, and being the one that kind of is like, I didn't see it. So, in this particular episode, I want to know: did this story hold space for someone like you, someone who is not necessarily in a rush to go out and watch everything and see everything and have a wealth of experience and knowledge with media consumption? Did this movie connect with you and let you into that space as one might hope if they were in that position?
I feel odd having this corner for myself because I feel like having not had such a wide media experience, that means that I have less thoughts about what I do watch because it's just like, this was a thing. I either enjoyed it or I didn't. It either resonated with me personally, which it could with anyone else personally, regardless of how many movies they've watched, or it didn't resonate with me personally. And again, that's more of a personality difference as opposed to a newcomer difference, or it depends on how many movies you've watched or not. But I will say, personality wise, just in essence, that this film did speak to slowing down, being present in the moment, focusing on what actually matters in life, as opposed to the rush of let's just be as productive and efficient physically with our time as possible. It did take time to nourish the soul and speak to the kinds of things that I find worth my time. Stories that mean something deeper are automatically going to be worth my time as much as, like, even if I don't take time to experience media widely, those are the stories that are going to stick with me, and those are the stories that are going to make me feel like it was a good use of my time to enjoy.
Sometimes the person who's seen less, their opinion on something is far less jaded by multiple years of experience of seeing a bunch of other things. So you have less things to compare it to, which makes your opinion on something far more valuable, far less biased than somebody who's like, oh, well, I've seen every single movie about grandmas and thing. And so when I saw this just doesn't stack up to it. Meanwhile, the normal humans who have not seen every single movie about grandmas. I don't even know how many grandma movies there are, but for the normies who've managed to see, only this, your view on that, I think, is valuable. I think the fact that you have less experience with a lot of different types of media is actually better than people who are, like I said, who have already kind of gotten set in our ways. It's like we have more to unlearn than you do. So your ability to be more objective is probably better than ours, in the sense of that, yes, your tastes are different, and we can always preface it by saying, this is my own personal opinion.
Yes.
However, I'm more inclined to take the opinion of somebody who hasn't seen a lot of something as to whether or not they thought it was good or not than somebody who's seen a lot of something. I can take it as like, oh, you've seen less, so maybe you're in the same boat as I am. So maybe if you liked it and you haven't seen a whole bunch of other stuff, then maybe I might like it too. So that would be my stance as far as that goes. But overall, I love where you're coming from as far as that goes. The last thing I will ask before we dip on out of here is, what is one takeaway, creative or emotional, that you're still sitting with after watching this?
I think it really does have to do with honoring the stories of people who came before us, even if we think that we've advanced far beyond that. Even if you look at someone and you just automatically clock them as an uninteresting person, there's an entire life lived behind that judgment that you make based on just seeing someone for their appearance. And so I think that this movie was a really great reminder that I'm going to continually go back to, of the stories and the way that we honor each other's stories matter. And also how valuable it is to sacrifice everything like Joey did to be able to lift up the stories of people who have felt discarded and unappreciated.
I agree. That's a solid takeaway. I guess mine is probably more creative, and it lines up with what we already talked about. Learning to use contrast to tell important stories, and I feel like that's a continuous thing that we say. Contrast. I feel like we talk about contrast a lot. Beginning of the season and now towards the end of that kind of thing, where you learn to set a character up against something that's the opposite, and that difference paints a much bigger picture for the story. And so in this situation where we have a man opening a business and doing all those kinds of things set up against the backdrop of women that are helping prop that up and help build it into something amazing, paints this beautiful picture about culture and family and resilience and the power and the resilience of women in general. Because that's the last thing I'll say about this is that scene where the grandmothers are talking about their different experiences and their lives. And so rarely do we
Mm,
ever really acknowledge how much women in general go through, have been through, and how much they shoulder for us.
mm.
In essence, to me, this movie is a metaphor for the lived experience of every man on the face of this earth. By that, I mean, we have no idea how much the women in our lives go through on a daily basis to ensure that we ourselves have the lives that we ultimately want. And that's be that whether that be your mother, your wife, your sister, your cousin, whatever. And it's oftentimes ignored. And the man is oftentimes propped up as the big success genius that did the visionary cool thing. Oba itself is a testament to this idea of like, it's so, and I'm not saying this to shine a light on you, Jaylon, and make you uncomfortable.
Please don't.
But it's it's in all honesty, it is the truth. So much of what we are is owed to our den mother. And I think that so much of who we are as men in this world is owed to the women around us, which is kind of weird how us as men tend to treat women so dismissively,
Mm.
even in spite of that, which is weird. It's kind of weird, guys. Stop. But overall, I just think that that's really cool. I feel like that is to me, that's the metaphor of this movie, is that while our society unfortunately forces women to suffer at the hands of a patriarchy, so much of our success is really due to
Mm.
the matriarch. And it's just not known. And this movie is a firm example. Joe would not have been anywhere near as successful as he was without the women in his life, the grandmothers, as well as the woman that he ended up seeing as well.
Yeah.
Like, it was the women that were the heroes of this movie. They all
Yeah.
pretty much every woman in this movie did something to help bring that thing to the fruition. You had the cooks, which were the grandmas. You had she wasn't really his girlfriend until like later, but like ultimately his girlfriend, who was like the lawyer who helped him, she exposed the health inspector guy and helped
Yep.
him like get another chance and did all that. You had the contractor's wife, which I feel I feel so weird talking about how we should recognize the importance of women. I don't even remember her name, but like
But we forget everyone's name, so it's
that's
okay.
fair. Yeah, it was like she
There's
she
no bias there.
mended she mended the fences between those two, as well as just kept pushing them to go. So it was like it was really the women that were kind of driving the story forward, even though the man was the main character. And I think that that's the kind of thing that, as a creative, as a writer myself, what I want to try to do is realize the importance of the surrounding cast members for my protagonist.
Mm,
And especially if it's thematic, if the supporting casts are thematically tied into the story, letting them push the story forward, not to the point where the protagonist has to become reactive to everything, but
right.
to the point where they are definitely doing their part to move the ball forward, if that makes sense.
As you were talking, it made me think also about, there's obviously things that men can do better to help us to be a healthier society, but there's also things that for women to do better, even if, your reaction to being oppressed by the patriarchy is to buck the role of nurturing that you've been uniquely gifted with. I think there's something to say for let's not buck that role because we're realizing it's an important role that our society is now lacking because women are now, instead of staying home and being that nurturing home base to support the people in their lives, they're now going out and having to do so much to be productive members of the society, be the ones in the limelight. And not saying there's anything wrong with that. I have deep respect and admiration for women in that role. But I think that we're also losing the importance of the behind the scenes roles. And the women do have that gifting, that skill being so necessary in our world, even if it means that you have to take a step out of the limelight because you have to play the supporting role. I think we should still honor how important that role is because when we have everyone leaving that role, now we have a huge gap of meaning and depth and nourishment to our souls and society now that we've been talking about in the American culture. So yeah, honoring not stepping away from a role that you're uniquely gifted in because you feel like it doesn't mean anything, but honoring the meaning of it even if it's a more behind the scenes role, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I will also say the testament. It is kind of a testament too, though, to women that in a society that we live in today, where it has become kind of, and I don't know if this is the case all over the world. I can only speak for the sample size of people that I've interacted with on or seen interact on the internet, which is not a real place. But it seems really popular to hate men in general. On top of that, to also buck the system of out with the traditional wife standards and traditional gender roles and all of that, which I'm all for. I'm totally fine with. You want to hate men, do what you do. If you want to not be a traditional wife, I'm totally fine with that as well. If it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not. But I do find that even those that are kind of diametrically opposed to those kinds of values still find themselves nurturing and caring for and helping men.
Mhm.
Which is even that's not I don't think I don't think it's not like, "Oh, that's just what you're meant to do." I think it's more of the kindness of women that even when they say that they don't wanna stand for
Mhm.
men, they still do it by nature. It's just by nature they care enough to do so, and I will forever be grateful for that, and all the women that are in my life because all of them are pretty fucking awesome, even when they're not. So
Even when they're on their period.
I did not I did not say that. That was
Okay,
not
we've
me.
come full circle. We can wrap it up. Now we can call it a day.
So that is pretty much our episode. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for being a part of this important conversation, ones that we
Sure.
need to be having more.
For sure. The next episode will be our live watch-a-thon thing. We've technically already done it,
It
so
was really fun. You should
eh,
totally go watch
you
it.
should definitely check it out. It was fun. And so that being said, officially, this is our last recording for the season. So thank you for listening. We appreciate you. And we look forward to diving into new and more interesting movies and books and other stuff as we come to the next season.
Definitely.